So it is Beatitudes Day. Blessings and curses, excitement and woe. This is one of the relatively few Bible passages I was expected to memorize when I grew up Roman Catholic. And we're not actually going to focus on Jesus' words this week. They're super important. But in this time of focusing on Luke, we're focusing on God's action. And this passage is a gorgeous, challenging example of how God's action happens through this powerful Jesus, right? Jesus calls us to follow him and then go out and change the world, right? In the actions at the first part of this reading, we have a chance to notice how Jesus' power works. We learn that when we're near Jesus, we will be healed. And when we pay attention, we'll be part of the healing. So this is famous, right? Everybody's heard where Jesus tells us, blessed are you, cursed are you. You could do like a 5-week series on the differences between how Matthew frames this and how Luke frames this. But the setting is Jesus' teaching, right? He went down and stood with them on a level place. And a large crowd of his disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem, from the coastal region, and they'd all come to hear him and be healed. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured, and in the crowd they were trying to touch him. For power went out of him and healed all of them, right? This is a Jesus who has some things to say, but his mere presence changes things, right? And he first goes down and he stands on a level place. We often think of the blessed are you, cursed are you, as part of the Sermon on the Mount. Luke doesn't have a mountain. In Luke, Jesus goes down and stands with the people. And that it's called a level place is one of these times when we're really going to focus in on the words, right? Because the words are important. In the Hebrew scriptures, a level place is a place of corpses, or a place of disgrace, or a place of idolatry or suffering. It's got some sort of like misery or mourning, right? This is a place you don't want to be. We get this reminder that Jesus is with us. Jesus voluntarily comes with us into these places where we're like, really rather not. And Jesus is like, I'm with you in that place. But it's the Bible. And so nothing is always only one thing or the other. We also have to remember that the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel use the level places as places where God's glory gets revealed, that it is in these shadowy, yucky places that we don't want to be, that God shows God's self, and God shows the people salvation, right? This is the Jesus we're getting to know. In the muck and the mess, there is also the miracle, right? Jesus comes down. Jesus comes down to this metaphorically unappealing place so that he can be near to as many people as possible. I am not somebody who's climbed a mountain. I'm probably never going to climb a mountain, and I'm fine with that. But I have heard that if you are on the side of a mountain, you don't actually have a lot of room to move because you don't want to fall off. And there's not a lot of room for people to be around you because they don't want to fall off. But when you find a level plane, you can get closer to people. Jesus knows our deep need for healing, and he's like, hey, I'm going to be there. When we get to be near Jesus, we can be healed, and when we pay attention to what Jesus is saying, we can be part of that healing. Jesus wants to talk to as many people as possible. We get this list of all these places people have come from to hear him, right? We also have to remember that these are people who are walking there to hear him. Right? It's not a matter of getting in the car and driving 10 minutes or an hour. It's a matter of a committed journey to go and be healed, or a committed journey to go and hear and learn. And so as he talks to the disciples, right? People who are already following him. But in the level place, everyone can hear him. And there's the chaos of the crowd too. These are people who are there, some to hear, but some just to be near, some just to touch. This is not a well-mannered queue. This is not people waiting patiently for their turn. This is a concert, a rally, Nobody's paying attention to the barriers that have been put up in hopes of keeping things in line. People have traveled for days, and they're going to make sure that they get what they have come for. People have been cured, and so there is a rush, right? We're seeing what's happening. Crowd mentality is kicking in. We're like, hey, I came to be healed. Can I be healed too? Power is coming out of him and healing them all, and he's giving them as much access to that as he can. Jesus is there both with words and physical presence in order to reach as many people as he can. They've come from all over to hear him, to be healed of their disease, to be healed of their diseases. Those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And we still do this. We long for healing. I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready for COVID to go away and to stay away. We are ready for the cancer to be gone and stay gone. We want the depression to be a vague memory. We want the shattered bones and broken spirits to be made whole and to be able to function like we think they should. And sometimes we get lucky. And sometimes it happens. Healing happens just the way we want. And sometimes we have the hard realization that healing in the Jesus sense is not the same as a medical cure. Sometimes we learn to live with it in faithful hope that God will continue to see us through. Sometimes we get the heartbreaking lesson that healing happens when we go into God's loving arms for the last time and enter that great whatever comes next. Sometimes we don't even know what kind of healing we want. We just know that whatever it is that's happening now can't be all there is. And we continue to pray that God's kingdom would come because we really don't know what else to pray for. We come to Jesus to be healed of so many things, healed in all sorts of ways. And we learn that when we're near Jesus, we will be healed. And when we pay attention, we'll be part of the healing. And so as we've done for the last few weeks, I'm continuing to figure out what health and healing look like. So we're going to break here for a moment and be gifted with music from our choir. So, when we're near Jesus, we'll be healed. When we pay attention, we'll be part of the healing. I want to think about that crowd. All in the crowd were trying to touch him, for power came out from him and power healed all of them, right? Power came out of him. One of the key things Luke focuses on about Jesus is that power, right? Jesus is powerful. And even though it's a word that's not necessarily very churchy, Jesus is also leaky, right? This is not a controlled power. This is not a power that does exactly what Jesus wants when it wants. This is a power that just comes out of Jesus. He heals even without intending to do so. Just being near him is enough. Just being near Jesus is enough to bring healing, whatever that healing looks like. It's also one of these neat kind of like English class moments where we realize this leaky thing is really important to who Jesus is, right? A couple chapters later, there's this really well-known story of a woman who's bleeding, and she's been bleeding for 12 years. And she reaches out and touches just the fringes of Jesus's cloak, and he is healed. And he's like, wait a minute, I'm leaking power again? Okay, we'll figure this out. Right? When we read things repeatedly, they sink into our hearts. When we hear this story and we notice and we're like, wait a minute, this is something that keeps happening, we start to go, okay, this is important. It's important to realize that just being near Jesus can be what heals us. But being near Jesus doesn't just heal us. It's never just one person. Being near Jesus allows us to be healed and then start leaking a little bit of power ourselves. The natural leak from being somebody who's been near Jesus is that we start to be a little more Jesus-y. It might be that we get out of our comfort zone a little more, go a little bit more onto that level plane. For our introverts, it might be going out into the crowd just a little bit more. For our extroverts, it might be a little extra time just sitting and seeing who needs what. Whatever our temperament, as we are healed, we begin to change and we begin to leak. We begin to leak love. We begin to leak hope. We begin to leak joy or peace or whatever this looks like in our lives. And since each of us has something a little different, it's going to look a little different for all of us. Part of this becomes the collective, right? We become the crowd. We become the people who don't just go forward, but then move over so that other people have access and other people have room. When we've been healed by being near Jesus, we realize that it's not individual. It is about how we're treating others who are also gathered with us. And this belief and action don't just stay on that level plane, they go out into our daily lives. Most of us live in or around Northbrook. We know what it's like to be in a place that is mostly flat. Even after a decade in Chicago, I'm still sometimes unsettled by the way that roads here are just so open once you get out of the city and the suburbs, right? All of a sudden they just stretch out and you're like, what is in the corner? Like, it's just unsettling if this isn't what you're used to. We can see forever. And it's gorgeous, and it's a little bit eerie. And that's one of the gifts of the level plane. When we look around, we can see a lot. And it's gorgeous, and it's a little bit eerie. We can see who's here and who's not. Does everyone look like me? Am I alone in my race, or my class, or my sex, or my gender, or my age? What's different? Who do I talk to? Does anybody talk to me? Who am I helping get up to the level plane, and how am I offering other people rest? I think more importantly, though, and this goes to Donna's don't get too comfortable at the beginning of the reading, for those of us whose lives aren't deeply uncomfortable all the time, the level plane gives us the gift of discomfort. On a level plane, we don't get to stand above others or look down. We're not in the valley looking up at others. The level plane is kind of a mess. It doesn't matter how high or fabulous my heels are. When you're surrounded by others who are on the same level, there are always people in the way. There are always heads in front of you. There are always elbows next to you. There are always people around you. And we have to move, and we have to shift, and we have to be part of that crowd, even if we're not really into being part of the crowd, because the crowd is part of what it means to follow Jesus. We have to do the work of remembering why we're there. We have to do the work of bringing our focus back to Jesus. We have to work to see whether we're in anyone else's way and what we can do to get out of the way. What would it mean for us to get out of the way? Right? Because I just keep thinking that if Jesus, Son of God, fully human, has put himself on a level plane so that as many of us as possible can get there, we don't get to do anything else. We don't get to hang out on mountaintops. We don't get to raise ourselves up or even let others raise ourselves up and then feel good about it because I didn't do it myself, right? And there's some irony here. I'm standing here in 4-inch heels on a raised dais, like our acoustics are not the same. But my hope is that our group ethos and our leadership is about not putting ourselves above Jesus or above anyone else. My prayer is that we become parts of the level plane, a place where people gather in the chaos and the crowd with the ripples of healing flowing over every one of us, being the beauty and chaos of being together and following Jesus. Jesus calls us to be together on that level plane so that we can experience healing and that we learn to follow him And that when the crowd disperses, we get to go out and be part of that healing the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.